What's it like living as a female expat in Asia? Why is it that there's a sudden uptick in the number of single women over the age of 50 moving to Southeast Asia for the very first time? And do these women know that the chances of them meeting another partner are very, very slim indeed? Well, if those questions or anything about the expatriate lifestyle are of interest to you, it is great to have you with me. My name is Wendy, and for more than 3 decades, I've lived and worked in 5 different countries in Asia. And I still live and work in Asia, these days in Thailand, for the last 12 years, in fact. So let's talk about this today, because it is true to say that when I was first an expat back in the day, at the end of the 80s, I never met any women who were older than 50 who were living in Asia by themselves and getting on with their lives. Now, that's not true of somewhere like Hong Kong. I may have met some of those women then who were working, but I'm talking about even women who've retired to a place like Thailand or Vietnam. And they're older than 50, and they've decided that their home country no longer does it for them. And the best thing for them to do would be to up sticks and move away. And I want to talk about some of the realities of that, and also what I think is making this particular trend more and more popular. So the most significant thing you could say about this particular topic is that for a lot of women, once they get to 50, 55, 60, their time has changed. Their lifestyles have changed. Now, I'm a Gen Xer, and maybe you're a Gen Xer as well. And we've had a lot of obligations up until now, haven't we? We've had to look after the kids. Perhaps we've been looking after parents. We've looked after a family. And maybe we've gone through a divorce, or maybe the kids have grown up and gone away, or maybe there's some family estrangement. And what I see is a lot of women who have decided to look for personal fulfillment and discover a new side to themselves, a new role for themselves, or perhaps rediscover an old role for themselves, maybe, to be something more than a wife and a mother, to find out who they really are after years and years of dedicating themselves to other people. And I think that this is a really valid thing, because in a place like Southeast Asia, if you've moved to a new community, there's a fair bit of reinvention that can go on with yourself. You can decide there and then what it is you're going to share and what it is you're not going to share. And if there are some things that you want to work on in terms of personal development, you're doing that in a fairly fresh field. So I think that this is part of the attraction, the idea that you've given so much of yourself and perhaps you've forgotten a little bit of who you are. So the idea of running away, if you like, or escaping and reinventing yourself in a new place is really attractive. And I totally get that, actually. I really do totally get that. Particularly if you have gone through some rather sticky situations, or perhaps you finally found yourself with just enough money to live, but your home country is incredibly expensive. And you realize, having gone on holiday to a place like Thailand, that you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck, and your lifestyle is going to be much, much better if you move away to this new place. So all of these things combined will be evident to you that this is a good choice. I can reinvent myself. I don't have to be known as, John's wife or Sally's mum. I don't have to carry any of that baggage with me. I can just be a whole new me, and I can afford to live in a way that I want to, that I don't always feel like I'm under some kind of financial pressure to keep up with the Joneses, because the Joneses aren't even there. Now, of course, moving to a new place comes with its challenges. And one of the challenges is the cognitive load of starting again, learning new languages, being in a totally new market, somewhere an environment that you're not terribly familiar with. But you can look at that two ways. You can look at it in the sense of, wow, this is really hard and that's really challenging. And what you can actually discover, the other way to look at it, is that you realize that you actually have more strengths and capabilities than you thought you did, particularly if you're living under the shadow of an expectation of how you behave or an expectation of who you are. When you go away to a new place, and there are these challenges, and I'm not saying that it's easy, because it surely does have a lot of challenges, then you realize that actually you're far more capable than you thought. And that's kind of nice. You realize that you are actually more than the sum of all your parts. Is that the way you say that? But you've actually got more to offer, and it's quite rewarding. You've got challenges, you meet them, you face them, and you conquer them. And there you are. look at you being all independent like that. So I think that's also a fantastic thing to think about. Another reason people may choose to make this lifestyle their own is because living in a place like Thailand or Vietnam, if you are not living in the city, if you're not living in Bangkok, if you move to a place like where I'm living, which is on the coast, you can actually slow your life down a little bit. You know, you can take things a little bit easier. Now, you might not consider moving to a country area in your home country, but if you move to a coastal town in Thailand, a little bit more exotic, and it's a slower life and it's nice. It gives you time to kind of move into your new mental space. You've got time to do things like go to the gym or look after your health. You can take up new hobbies. There's more time built in because life is just a little bit slower and the pace is a little bit slower. And again, you're under no obligation. Nobody's watching you or judging you. People who've known your past or know how you are, they're not around. So you can just be who you want to be in that space, giving yourself time to think and to learn and to grow. One of the big factors in moving to Southeast Asia as an expat woman in particular, is the idea of personal safety. And I have talked about this in another video, which I'll link somewhere, because as an expatriate woman in Southeast Asia, I cannot tell you how incredibly safe I personally feel. In the many, many years that I have lived in Asia, I've never felt physically threatened or nervous about any street I've walked down or any place that I've been in. There is a kind of it's a strange thing. There's a kind of a visual, like you are visually noted as an expatriate woman wherever you are, basically because you look a bit different. And it's not in your face, but if you're an expat woman and you walk into the local chicken shop, somebody sort of clocks you and says, "Oh, there's that expat woman." There's no harm meant by it. But what it means is that if something does go wrong, there's a big kerfuffle, believe me. And in fact, I've never really had anything go wrong. I raised a daughter in Hong Kong, and when she was going to live in Australia for the first significant time, and she was going off to university, I had to explain to her that it would not be okay for her and her friends to get hammered drunk and jump on the train at night time and leave the bag on the train, and everything would be fine. Which in Hong Kong, is the way that it is. If you leave your bag on a train in Hong Kong, somebody picks it up and hands it into the police, and then they find you and they come and give you the bag back. That doesn't happen in other places, and we know that. So from a practical point of view, one of the big aspects of wanting to live in Southeast Asia for women, particularly for older women, is the idea that you are physically very, very safe. Now, are there scammers out there? Yes, there are. I'm not saying it's perfect. And you have to be aware of that kind of thing. But in terms of, attack or just any kind of fear like that, I really haven't felt that for so many decades. I've forgotten what it's like. And I get totally paranoid when I go to other countries because, people tell me, "Oh, watch out for your handbag. Make sure that you've got your wallet in your bra," or whatever it is. And, I've just never really thought about that in Asia. So that is one really important aspect, and probably part of the reason why Southeast Asia is appealing for women like me. The other big plus to moving to Southeast Asia is that you will find a good supportive network wherever you move to. Remember that when you're new as an expat, you're looking for new friends, and we'll talk about that in a moment about, how to make friends. But you're meeting new friends, you're going to find your new tribe. It takes a little while, but you will. And all of that comes about because everybody has been in the same situation as you. So if you suddenly discover that your fridge is leaking and you need someone to come and help you with that, somebody will have a number and they will share it with you, okay? So the supportive network is out there in all communities that I've ever been in Asia. And that is also very delightful and one of the real bonuses of living in these communities. And as I discussed a little minute ago, the idea of having financial independence. So, not having to worry about the cost of a coffee. I have no idea how much a coffee costs anymore in Australia where I grew up. I'm a Kiwi, but I grew up in Australia. But I believe it's expensive. Next year, I'm going back to Australia for a school reunion, and I'm saving up now. And I've just been to Japan twice in this year and didn't worry about the costs at all. So there you go. So having financial independence is also a big factor as to why women are moving to Southeast Asia and living as expats there. And so this brings us to the topic of how to make new friends. And I won't talk about all of that here because I'll link a video that I did before. It will take a little bit of time to perhaps meet your new buddies, and you'll have a few duff situations before you find your real tribe. But just persevere with it. I'll link the video somewhere here, as I said, so that you can have a look at some tips that might help you. But that is one of the downsides. Starting afresh means starting afresh. And maybe you see that as something that's, really something that you want to do, or maybe you're a little bit nervous about that. It's normal to be nervous about that, but it won't take you long. And you just have to follow a few, basic good ideas, and soon enough you'll find your people. My final thought for all of this, and this is something that I have to talk about, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, that, if you think you're going to come to Southeast Asia and find your expat Prince Charming, I have some very bad news for you. The truth of the matter is that most guys who move to Asia, particularly Southeast Asia, as single men of a certain age, you're probably not their target. And that's okay. If you are looking for a partnership and you think there's some cool guy who's decided to have the same lifestyle as you, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it's so, so rare. So that's okay. If that's not your goal, if that's not interesting to you, don't forget you can always have one-night stands. There's no rules against that. Tinder exists, and as do other things. I've done that. I'm not going to lie. So, if that's enough for you, or you don't really care, that part of you is just sort of you're not interested in, then you don't have to worry about that. But if you are interested in, meeting the love of your life in Asia, unless you meet a really cool local guy wherever you're living, but that is also quite difficult, I think, sometimes. Easier for the younger ones, not so easy for the older ones. But if you don't mind all of that, I think you'll be set. So those are my thoughts. That's what I think is leading the charge on the incredible increase of the number of single women over the age of 50 or 55 who I've seen moving to Southeast Asia in the last, I'm going to say, at least 8 years. The increase has been stark enough for it to make note quite around the traps. A lot of people talking about it. Wow, I met another person. Wow, I met these other people. Wow. And I get questions all the time. People ask me all the time, what's it really like? Which is why I do these videos, because I want to tell you what it's really like. And if that is of interest to you, don't forget to subscribe. Remember, maybe you don't know this, but only 1 in 5 people generally subscribe to a channel after they watch the videos, even if they watch all the videos. And ouch, the algorithm loves it if you subscribe. Or if you'd like to leave a comment, negative or positive, they both work for the algorithm, or some ideas or thoughts that you have about anything about the expat lifestyle. If you've got any questions, do drop them down in the link below. And if you are interested in finding out more, and there's a topic that I haven't covered, do feel free to ask me about that. That's what I see it as. The reason that so many more women of our age are moving to Asia and having a cool time is because they're making choices about what they want to do and who they want to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hope you have a great day. Lovely to talk to you. Speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.